It's season 2, season 2, season 2, season 2. What's the show called again?
What? Wait.
Discography discussion. Season 2. Rob,
Sound of
my
Music.
boy. Sound of Music. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good,
Post-
as Larry David would say.
Post more discussion, post more technical issues, I'm fine.
Yeah, as per usual, we had some technical issues, so maybe we should talk about that really quick before we get started.
Sure.
Because if you recall, we were really hyping last season during the King Crimson series that we were going to transition to using Anchor, and although we are still going to do that, we were hoping to do so for, season 2. That didn't happen. We both downloaded Anchor, and we were having some issues as far as that goes. So
Anchor, get your shit together and make it more
Anchor,
functional.
get your shit together. Really, it's probably more like the two of us are just idiots, and we probably missed something. Either way, guys, we're gonna look into that in between episodes more. Promise you that we're gonna, transition to that. And look, I guess right now it's irrelevant because either way, we're gonna continue to post on the YouTube Sound of Music page, but hoping to use Anchor as well so we could sort of branch out the podcast a little more.
Also, I want to thank anybody who's watching this who watched the whole King Crimson discography series. That was a blast to do. It was also at times very challenging and time consuming, but it feels really good to get it done. So thanks, guys.
It is like, I don't even know, but it really was such a blast doing that.
Yep.
But boy, was it. I don't want to say it was a chore, because we wouldn't be doing this if it were a chore, but it really, we were kind of just figuring this whole thing out as we went with that series.
Yep.
I think as we progressed, it just got better and better, and I'm really excited about this one, guys, because this next season is gonna blow the last one as far as I'm concerned. As far as just you and I think we've become more confident with this recording format, and just we've got a new schedule that I think is just going to jive better with everyone.
Yep.
So let's actually talk about the schedule before we get started.
Yeah, we're planning to record every other Sunday, so every 2 weeks, and then and as far as I know, at least on the YouTube page, it will be posted every Friday. Or I keep saying every other Friday. Okay, every other Friday, and if we get Anchor to work, it'll probably be actually posted that Sunday on Anchor and Spotify and stuff, because you could just post it right away. So I would, you guys who are watching on YouTube, just expect it'll be every other Friday, and then again, if we branch off and you guys are listening to this now on one of the other platforms, most likely it'll be Sunday. So yeah, there you go. That's the new that's the new schedule.
So that's the new schedule, and let's just touch base on the new format. So, new format, we got some feedback on the last season when we did the King Crimson series, and I think Rob and I were slowly starting to agree too that 2 hours, 2.5 hours was just too long. I mean, some of my favorite podcasts I listen to can be that long, but I know the ones that I tend to enjoy the most are in that 45 to 90 minute mark. So with that being said, we are looking to, instead of just covering a period in the artist's career that we're discussing, we're going to, each episode is going to be an album. So because of that, not going to be as long, right? So we're looking to keep it in the 35-45 minute range with the occasional hour long episodes, which this episode will more than likely be close to that.
We want to try to stay under an hour if we can. Hour is definitely on the long side of things.
That is the goal, but as you all know, Rob and I do have the tendency to just babble on sometimes.
Yeah.
But we will be keeping a lot of the same of what we did in the King Crimson series. So we're still going to, at the end, when we're done discussing the album, we'll do our top 3 favorite tracks. We'll do our final thoughts. We're going to go track by track like we did in the last series, talk about singles, B-sides, And we will do a wrap-up episode, just like we did for the King Crimson series, where
Yes.
we rank the studio albums as well as do our individual top 20 songs and combined top 20 songs as well.
Yep, and otherwise, yeah, like you said, the format is gonna stay largely the same. So, just expect us doing David Bowie albums for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna do that math right now, but expect 2 albums a month, and guys, we'll get to Black Star before you know it.
Yeah.
So, if you haven't picked up on the artist that we are going to be discussing for season 2, or if you haven't even listened to season 1, where we mentioned in the last episode who we're going to be covering, but of course it's going to be David Bowie for this season. And I got to tell you, I am super stoked to be talking about Bowie with you. And we're going to dive in a second about what Bowie means to each of us, our relationship with Bowie. But this is probably the guy, when we first started talking about doing this podcast together, Rob, this was probably the one that I was most excited to talk to you about. And we threw in a bunch of names, even before when we knew we were doing King Crimson, we threw in a bunch of names, and Bowie was one of the original names that we both brought up.
Yes.
So I'm super excited.
Oh, I'm stoked. Me too. I really love David Bowie, and you kind of got into Bowie. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I mean, we'll talk about maybe a little bit of history of each of us with David Bowie in a second, but I recall you kind of got into Bowie a little later, and then when you really started getting into him is when we kind of weren't talking as much. So I'm kind of curious to see how your taste has changed since I remember, you getting into his stuff.
Yeah, same. So actually, let's get into that. So you and I go back, like close to 12 years, and you've always been a Bowie guy. Specifically, I knew you were really into, and still are, into the glam era. So Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust, Diamond Dogs, Aladdin Sane, Hunky Dory. And I've always really liked David Bowie. There was never a point in my life that I didn't think he was okay or never disliked him. I've always liked Bowie. But you're right, as far as really just consuming Bowie and really getting into his catalog, it was a little later for me. Around 2011, 2012 is really when I got into Bowie. So I guess let's do that. Actually, let's give some background of how each of us got into Bowie, and then we could talk about what he means to us before we get started.
Sure.
So, as I mentioned, I got into Bowie seriously around 2011, 2012. I believe The Next Day came out early 2013, and I was in a weird place in my life. So I was just graduating county college, December 2012, and of course transitioning to the next phase of my college career. I don't know. So the school I went to was only a school I went to for one semester, and I just I'm not gonna really get into that phase, but it was just a low point in my life. Things weren't working out. I didn't like the school. I wasn't making any friends there. I was starting to question if I made the right career choice. I was starting to question if college was right for me as a whole. So just really getting to sort of like downward spiral. And so this would have been the beginning of that semester, winter 2013. And this was right around the time The Next Day came out. And, there was just a lot of hype on that record because, like, holy fuck, Bowie's got a new album. And it had been 10 years since the last one. He wasn't touring. And it just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I vaguely remember when Where Are We Now was released as a single, but it was still, like, it came out of nowhere, though. Like, Bowie's got a new album. And so I remember picking it up at the Best Buy, right by the school I was going to, and that's all I listened to for weeks and weeks and weeks. And for some reason, even if I were to rank my David Bowie albums for you right now, I can tell you with confidence that The Next Day would not be in my top 10. It's a phenomenal album, but that album holds a special place in my heart because it's really when my love for Bowie really was developing, and that record for some reason was just I whenever I listen to that record, it does take me back to that moment, and not in a melancholy sort of way, but just looking back like, this is what you went through, but you know what, life's pretty good now.
Yeah, and sometimes when you associate music with a hard time in your life, it actually, you do have a fondness for it because of, like I mentioned in the previous episode, The Power to Believe randomly. Same deal. It was actually around that same time too. I listened to The Power to Believe and I was just kind of like, it got me through kind of a tough time, and it made me appreciate it even more because because music is escapism, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I could see what you're saying.
So that record alone, just for that reason, will always hold a special place in my heart. And I won't get as in depth, but similarly, when Black Star was released in 2016, I was also still in college. I was at the school where I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in, but same thing. I was sort of transitioning to post-college. I think I had one more semester left till student teaching, trying to figure things out long-term in my personal life with my girlfriend, but as well as, my career. And so sort of in a funk in that period too. So like the next day, Black Star was very much like my soundtrack to 2016. So Bowie has two albums for me. 2013, The Next Day was my soundtrack, and Black Star was my soundtrack for 2016. So, like you said, music is, we use it to escapism, right?
Yeah.
I listen to all sorts of different kinds of music, and there's very few artists that really take it to that next level for me, where we could do a whole podcast series just on that, and that just really mean the world to me.
Yeah.
And the Beatles, of course, are one of them. They're my favorite band. I feel that way about Miles Davis, but David Bowie's also that guy where David Bowie he's just special. I can just talk about what Bowie means to me this whole episode, but I want to hear your backstory with Bowie. So take it away, man.
Well, for me, it was definitely different. I was never really into music when I was really young, and it wasn't till about...
That's shocking, by the way.
Yeah, right? I remember once saying I didn't like music at all, and let me back that up by saying that I mostly heard my mom play soft rock all the time, and country. So when that's like 90% of what you heard, you can understand the statement, I don't like music. But anyway, one of the other... Now, the exception to that rule, of course, was my dad was a big Beatles fan. So I heard a lot of Beatles growing up, too. And so, like, it was probably, like, 2001 to something like that is when I started really getting into just music, rock music, classic rock, right? It started with a little band that you guys might know called Pink Floyd. But my number 2 was David Bowie. And long story short... my dad had, I was basically...
I didn't mean to interrupt. Is Bowie still your number 2?
Sorry?
Is Bowie still your number 2?
I wouldn't call him my number 2 favorite, but he was probably the second artist that just made me go, wow. Like, it was the...
okay.
It was a 1-2 punch of me of Pink Floyd, and then David Bowie, and then Queen was the third punch. So it was like... Three amazing artists.
Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. So my dad recommended that I hear Pink Floyd, and then I had gotten really into Pink Floyd, and I think my dad had gotten sick of hearing Pink Floyd. And so he's like, have you heard of David Bowie? And I was like, who's that? And then at some point shortly after, I got the Best of Bowie collection, which I maintain is one of the best of the 2-disc Best of Bowie collection. It's got that blue cover, and...
It's a pretty solid compilation. There's one I would argue that's
for a beginner, for somebody first discovering Bowie's music. I think it's a great thing, and
yeah.
I just fell in love with songs like "Changes" and "Space Oddity" and "Rebel Rebel" and name insert a Bowie hit here, right? And I've always just had David Bowie was a huge reason that I got into music in the first place. So I have a very, very special place in my heart. And I've just been a Bowie fan ever since. And so, 2001, 2? That's been how many years now? 20 years almost? So I remember when he was... I remember always wanting to see him in concert. And I think the last time he toured was like 2003 or something. Wasn't it the reality tour?
2003, 2004, the reality tour.
And around that time, I was like, next time he goes on tour, I'm going to go see him. And it never happened, obviously, because he never toured after that. But yeah, I don't know. I mostly fell in love with early Bowie. Like I said, I'm also a huge T-Rex fan. They were probably the fourth band that I got really into, actually. So, I mean, my Bowie was always, for a long time, it was Ziggy Stardust. Diamond Dogs is still probably my favorite album. And Aladdin Sane and that stuff. But I've since, obviously, gotten into all kinds of his... Like, I always liked Let's Dance, and the Berlin albums were always really great, too. Low and stuff like that. Later Bowie, I'm less familiar with. So that is something that I'm really interested in with this podcast. I would say I'm really, really interested in hearing his stuff from particularly like the 90s on. I don't really know very much.
I can't wait to discuss that with you because I mean, definitely, definitely hit like sort of this renaissance. I mean, especially the last 4 albums I think are all phenomenal records. Maybe something I can get into in another episode, but because you talked about the reality tour, I would say I got as close as one could possibly get to a David Bowie concert, and that was last year. My brother and I saw the David Bowie, I think it was called the David Bowie Experience, but it had so many players, touring musicians, studio musicians that played with him over the years. The band was led by the legendary Mike Garson, but Gary Leonard played. What's his name? Earl. I can't think of his name. He played on Station to Station, Diamond Dogs. It's gonna bug me right now, but and it was a phenomenal show. So that was the closest that I got to, I guess, seeing Bowie live, and definitely his spirit was there, for sure. But of course, the man himself wasn't. But so sort of a neat background as to how both of us got into Bowie. You definitely got into him a lot sooner than I did. Side note, I never thought I would hear you say the words, "I'm sick of hearing Pink Floyd." Never thought that sentence would come out of your mouth.
No, it wasn't me that said that. It was, and my dad didn't say that exact thing, but basically I kept playing the same Pink Floyd songs over and over and over and over.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I think he was particularly getting sick of hearing the song "Money." So he's like, "Have you heard of David Bowie?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that makes more sense. Okay, I misheard you there. All right, dude. So let's get into it. So, normally you guys are used to, if you've been following us since Crimson, we talk about singles and B-sides after we discuss the record. But Bowie had several singles that were released before his debut that I kind of think were important to talk about before we get into the first record. And so kind of gradually leads up to where he was going as self-titled album.
I do want to say that I am not very familiar with these, so I kind of brushed over them a little, but I didn't.
Most of these we are going to breeze over. There's one I might spend a minute on, but we'll breeze through most of these. I do just want to point out for the hardcore listeners that I purposely did not include Davy Jones with the King Bees, and that goes far back as like the early 60s, 1964, I believe. Just because, not that those weren't good singles, they're actually not that bad, but I felt that starting with David Bowie with the lower third was just a more appropriate place to start. So let's get into some of these singles. So we have, this was released in 1966, David Bowie with the lower third. The A-side is Can't Help Thinking About Me, and I Say to Myself is the B-side. So I don't know if you listened to these particular tracks or not. They're not bad.
They're very 60s. They sound very 60s pop. Very Beatles-esque.
Specifically, I was going to say Help era Beatles. sounding, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But just your traditional early to mid 60s pop. Nothing really special, but just catchy songs, great chorus. That's really all I have to say about that. I probably like both these songs better than most of the songs on the debut album. Which I want to get this out of the way too, really quick. I don't want to, as we get into this first record, I have strong opinions on it. So I don't want what I just said about Bowie and what Bowie means to me 5 minutes ago. I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself. Bowie, was just one of those guys that, the first album didn't hit. You're either a band like Crimson, where you released a debut album that people will hold to high regard and will always compare every subsequent record to that, or you've got the opposite end of the spectrum with a guy like Bowie, where even the man himself tried to forget that record even existed.
And you can really, to be quite honest with you, it wasn't until quite a few years later that I even knew about this record. I always thought Space Oddity was his first album for quite a few years. I did too, for the longest time. Quite a few years, actually. Yeah. I don't think it was until like 2010 or something. I mean, for me, that's like, I think I saw it at a CD store. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, this isn't, and I ended up buying it. Yeah. So it was like weird.
Well, they, like around the time he passed away, and they've been still putting him out every year. They've been putting out these box sets of, every album. Remastered, some of them even remixed. And the first one, it's called 5 Years. It starts from Space Oddity to Aladdin Sane, I think. So even that doesn't include this album. But anyways, let's dive into the rest of these singles. Released in 1966, shortly after the lower third singles, we have, this is just Bowie this time. At least just Bowie's name. The A side is Do Anything You Say, and the B side is Good Morning Girl. Do Anything You Say is okay. It kind of continues that same style as did the other two singles that we just spoke about prior. So again, if you're into that, check that one out. And the B side's not that great. Good Morning Girl. I don't really have anything to say to it other than I just don't think it's that great of a song. So right after that, also released later in 1966. I should have pulled up the exact dates, but oh well. We have I Dig Everything is the A side, and I'm Not Losing Sleep is the B side. Same thing. Both of these are okay. I Dig Everything is okay. Actually, I take that back. I'm Not Losing Sleep is not good. So that's two B sides in a row. Not that great. Then shortly released. No. That's the next one. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Next we have Rubber Band is the A side, which is on the first record. This is a different version of the song, an earlier take, I guess. So Rubber Band's the A side, and the B side, London Boys. I'm just going to go ahead and say it about London Boys. This is the best song of this era.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was reading about this album, and there was like a reviewer that said that, or a few reviewers that said that was kind of like the standout track from all this period of the band. So I actually did listen to this, and I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a decent song.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't know why it wasn't included on the album. You can get it on reissues of the first David Bowie album, but on the original track listing, London Boys is not included. And I honestly don't know why. I think it's got a really beautiful arrangement. I think Bowie's vocals, which I'm going to talk about his vocals more when we get into the first record, but Bowie's vocals sound great. He sounds confident. It's just a great track. I think it's the best from the 65, 67 era of Bowie. So I'm a little puzzled, but also curious why it wasn't included. So definitely check that song out. That's, again, London Boys. And all of these songs that we've been talking about so far, you can find on various Bowie compilations. One specifically where I found a lot of these was on The World of David Bowie, which was released, I believe, around when The Man Who Sold the World was released. And there's another compilation called Images 1966 to 1967. So you can find a lot of these tracks that we're talking about on either of those compilations, as well as other ones that we're not going to get into. And then one more single, which, oh, for fuck's sake, forgot about this song. The Laughing Gnome. God, it's so bad.
I was like, oh, let's hear this. It took me about, I don't know, 10 seconds for me to shut it off.
Like there's like this like he's using this like chipmunk
Voice, yeah.
like voice effect.
It reminded me of several species of small furry animals gathered together and grooving with a pict, which is the song from Umaguma from Pink Floyd. Yes, I remember that title. Go. How could you forget it?
I did. But it's not good, and I'm sure it was meant to be this like novelty goofy thing, but it kind of, this song actually later on kind of developed its own cult following when Bowie really started to get popular. No joke, when Bowie started to get popular in the early 70s, when Ziggy came out, they were just RCA was just going through the back catalog releasing anything that they could, and they re-released The Laughing Gnome as a single, and it wasn't a hit per se, but it kind of like became its own thing. I know Bowie completely rejects it. I just want to quickly pull up this quote from 2000 from Bowie himself about The Laughing Gnome. Let me find it really quick. This should be good. Babble on while I'm finding this.
Yeah, this track here was I don't know why he thought, or why some people thought that was a good. I mean, this is why I don't really like Alvin and the Chipmunks, because the voice is so bad.
It's so bad. And I just found the quote, by the way.
Okay.
So this is from Bowie himself. I really think I should have done more for gnomes. I always feel a bit guilty that I just put my feet into the water and never sort of dived into the deep end. I really could have produced a new sensibility for the garden gnome in Britain. Gnome should have been explored more deeply.
That's great.
It's a very clever way of pretty much dissing your own song. And the B side, The Gospel According to Tony Day, is also shit. Don't waste your time checking that out. Okay, so that's all of the pre-self-titled singles. Let's get into album number 1. David Bowie, released in 1967. It is the self-titled debut studio album by English musician David Bowie, released on June 1st, 1967 on Deram Records. Its style and content bears no resemblance to the type of music that he was later known for, such as the folk rock influenced Space Oddity or the glam rock of the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars.
It's very different than most of what I've heard by him.
Different is one way of putting it.
But you also have to, I think though, before we tear the album to pieces, I think, to be fair with it, it was his first record. You have to think about the time when this was put out. June 67. That's around like when Sgt. Pepper came out.
It actually was released the same exact day as Sgt. Pepper.
So I don't know. I think you need to have certain allowances with this record because of when it came out, and think of where kind of pop music and particularly British pop was at the time. And I think I get the sense here that Bowie was trying to stand out a little bit, because if you just hearing some of those early singles, you could definitely hear, while some of the stuff like, the first couple singles, Can't Help Thinking About Me and Do Anything You Say and all that, they were okay, but they sound like the Beatles, and there was 100 bands that were trying to sound like the Beatles, so it's not really anything stand out or
hundreds, trying thousands.
Yeah, exactly. Fine, there's several thousand, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like I have to give him credit for trying to sound different, or sound unique.
So that's the thing, and that's where I disagree. I don't think it sounds different to anything of that time. And I was thinking about this last week. as I was, prepping myself to listen to this piece of garbage, is there's one thing that every David Bowie album has in common. One thing. From this one all the way to Black Star. And you just said it. Bowie was a chameleon.
Yep.
Can't talk today. A chameleon, right? He very much, although not executed very well on this record, but very much executed well on later records, he very much had a knack for taking influence of styles of music that were popular of the time. So if you really think about it, and you can argue in one sense that Bowie wasn't an innovator in music like, say, the Beatles were. But he had this knack of taking all these different styles, whether they were popular, like, funk and, glam,
right,
or a little more, underground, like krautrock. He had this knack of taking all this different styles and making it his own. No one can do David Bowie other than David Bowie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So while, yes, I am completely knocking him for this on this record, he masters this style. You can almost call this an art form in of itself.
Yeah.
Taking all of these, different styles of music and just sort of throwing it in a blender. He does this on every record. I mean, you can name an album and I will start throwing, whatever artist at you. I mean, you can take a look at a record like Outside, total Nine Inch Nails influence. A record like Low, Eno, Iggy, we can just go on and on. And we'll talk about what some of the influences were on this particular record, the Beatles especially. But yeah, something I was thinking about as I was listening to this the other day. So while not executed very well on this record, wait till we get further in the catalog, guys. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Alrighty. Well, I'm ready to go track by track if you are.
Here we go. Side 1, track 1. Uncle Arthur. Kind of going back to my tangent I just went on in a second, but I'll keep it brief, I promise. I was also thinking about this. And, a lot of these lyrics, although I don't think they're great, they're very eccentric. What do some of these lyrics remind me of? The eccentric lyrics that were on Sgt. Pepper. So the question I was asking myself, would I feel differently about some of these songs if it were the Beatles singing these songs? George Martin production. Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, Starr. Would I feel differently about these songs? And the answer is I don't know, to be honest with you. On one hand, I want to say yes, I probably would have if this were a Beatles record, I would have a total different opinion.
Well, I think it would sound completely different too, because you don't have the you'd have more vocal harmonies. More than likely you'd probably have.
Sure.
I feel like the entire record would be played in a different style almost. I mean, because the Beatles influence is there, but I feel like it's unquestionably Bowie at the same time, and Bowie he has a style of his own.
See, and that's where I disagree. I mean, on as we get into the catalog, yes, I'm with you, but for this one, this is not Bowie to me. There's, I think he is just, one song we're trying to be the Beatles, another track we're trying to be the Kings, another one we're trying to be Syd Barrett. I don't feel a sense of this is David Bowie on a single song. And while a record like Sgt. Pepper, although it was released 50 plus years ago, still sounds, it still sounds like it could be a contemporary record. Right off the bat, when we get into the song, I'm like, oh god, this already feels dated sounding.
Yeah, well, I guess that's fair. I definitely hear a lot of Syd Barrett in this album.
We were talking about that off mic the other day, and as I continued to listen to this more and more, I definitely hear it, and it's funny because on Spotify, without fail, every time after I would finish this record, the song Octopus would come on by Syd Barrett, and that's when it started to click. Like, yeah, I can definitely hear the Syd Barrett influence. Totally.
Yeah, this track, Uncle Arthur, I've got a few notes here. I thought the lyrics were kind of silly. And it's pretty standard British pop sounding, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of like the guitar and the horn in it. That was pretty much what I wrote.
Okay.
The lyrics
All
are
right.
kind of silly, you know. I don't know what exactly he's trying to say in the song. It just sounds like kind of like an adult man who kind of acts like a child and still lives with his mother, and then runs off with a woman, decides he doesn't like it, and then goes back to mom. Kind of, it was a weird song lyrically.
Yeah, well, a lot of these lyrics are pretty weird, but that's I guess that's another thing besides the chameleon. I can't talk. Statement I just made. That's probably another commonality with all of his records. Is this guy writes some pretty weird songs.
Yeah, he does, definitely. Very eclectic lyrics.
For sure. But all right. So it sounds like that's really all you have for Uncle Arthur.
I didn't really have much to say. It's not a bad song. It's pretty average, you know, maybe slightly below. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to track 2, "Sell Me a Coat." I like the beginning of the song, the la 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 in the beginning with the strings underneath.
La 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 la.
I thought that was really neat, but then 30 seconds in, I'm already over this song. What I will say, and I was also sharing this with you off mic the other day, is unlike the King Crimson series, this one already has been putting me in the mood for other stuff, specifically Scott Walker. So Scott Walker was another big early influence for Bowie, along with Syd Barrett, and I'm a pretty big Scott Walker fan. I haven't listened to him in a long time, but I've been going back the last couple of days and listening to a lot of the Walker Brothers, as well as Scott Walker's solo albums from the late 60s, early 70s. So there's a lot of Scott Walker influence on this record, I think, as well as Space Oddity. But specifically with the orchestration, the use of orchestral instruments. So I do appreciate that, of course. I almost feel that there are a couple songs where Bowie is literally trying to channel Scott Walker, and it usually doesn't pan out very well. But, all in all, this is an okay to not that great of a song, but already better than the first track.
Yeah, I actually kind of like this one a little bit, and I feel like this one also has a little bit of echoes of what is going to come in the next album. It kind of has that, like, what is it? There's kind of a folkiness to it, and it has the melody reminds me a little bit of some stuff off of Space Oddity. I don't know. I think it's a decent song. It's like you said, it's definitely better than the first one. It kind of has a wintry feel to it, which is pretty cool. And I think the melody is really nice, like in the chorus. It's definitely much more. It held my interest a lot more than Uncle Arthur did. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's where I definitely agree with you. Is of the two tracks, there's definitely some small elements of this song that also held my interest every time I was listening to this record. All right, so that brings us to track 3, "Love You Till." Hold on, is it "Love You Till Tuesday"? Because I'm looking at.
I've got Rubber Band. So we should say real quick that we both So I listened to the version of this album on Spotify, which apparently is not the version of the album that has, or that's like the official track listing of it.
Yes, and let me just stop you for 1 second, because this particular instance was a typo on my part, because Rubber Band, because I'm looking at my individual notes as well as our script. Rubber Band is the next track.
Yep.
I just forgot to include it in our script notes, but go ahead, as you were saying.
Yeah, so I know it's a little different, but yeah, I also have Rubber Band as the next one, so...
Okay, you do. And we'll talk about the missing tracks on Spotify, because they pop up on site too.
I actually like this song quite a bit.
I personally don't care for it. It is definitely, what I appreciate about it is very Sgt. Pepper-ish.
Kind of,
This is definitely a track that could easily fit on that record. But other than that, that's really the only opinion I have on it. Just, again, another track, but you said you kind of like it.
Yeah, I like the trumpet on it, and I thought that the lyrics there was kind of a funny twist ending about it where he's talking about how he wants to join the band, and then at the end you find out it's because his girl left him for the leader of the band. It was just lyrically it was kind of funny. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty cool track.
All right, so that brings us to track 4, "Love You Till Tuesday." Not track 3, that is track 4.
Track 4, yep.
And I like the instrumentals on this one.
Xylophones on it. It's pretty cool. Strings.
Yeah. Several of these tracks, I will say, I like the instrumentals. That's something actually I forgot to do in our notes was add the other musicians that played on the record. Kind of like what we did with King Crimson, introduce the band members. But anyways, not important right now. But I do like the instrumentals on this one. Going back to my comment I made earlier in the episode, that I mentioned about the lack of confidence in Bowie's vocals in a lot of these songs. And this is the first track where you really hear it. Specifically the one lyric. I don't have it in front of me, but it's whatever, blah, 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 love you till Tuesday. It's only me! Oh, God. It's only me! And he's got a couple moments like that on this record. Like, oh, Bowie, it's okay. You'll get better. You'll get better.
This one was kind of like, it could have been a really good song, but it missed a bit. I do like that it's kind of whimsical sounding, and the chorus is a bit catchy. But yeah, the vocals are just goofy at some points, like it just is. And the lyrics honestly are a little cheesy. You know, I thought the lyrics weren't that great.
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm not really sure if there's a single lyric.
Sorry?
On this record that I said I don't even think there's a single lyric on this record that I think is that great.
I'm trying to see if I want to agree with you or not. Maybe. We'll see. Let's keep going.
All right. So that brings us to as I'm looking at the next tracks,
it should be
kind of sort of taking.
Is it There Is a Happy Land, I believe?
That statement back. But yes, There Is a Happy Land. So here I go with a typo again. In my notes, I have There Is a Happy Land. On our script notes, I have There Is a Happy Place. It is indeed There Is a Happy Land. I'm fucking up today, guys.
It's all right. It's okay. It's the first episode of the new season. There's allowances. But you better do better next time.
I done goofed. I promise I'll do better next time. Anyways, up to this point, this is the best track to me. Up to this point.
Yeah, this was good. This was a good one.
This is a pretty decent track. I wanted to point out with Uncle Arthur as well, but it applies to this song as well. This song talks about Tiny Tim. There's a song on Heathen called Slip Away, where he actually references Tiny Tim and Uncle Arthur again. That song in general, and we'll talk about that way down the pipeline, but that song in particular really references like this era of Bowie's life. Great track, by the way, Slip Away. But yeah, as far as There's a Happy Land goes, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's the best up to this point.
I like the lyrics. It's cool that he kind of writes it from a child's perspective. This one really gave me Syd Barrett vibes lyrically. It so sounds like because Syd Barrett kind of had that at times did that nursery rhyming kind of thing, and this totally sounds Syd influenced.
Yeah, totally. This song almost feels like it could sound like it could even be like a B-side to really the next record.
Yeah.
But the only thing I don't like about this song is at the end he does this boodaloo, boodaloo, boop, boop, boop.
Yeah,
thing.
that was a little stupid.
Stop that.
But and also instrumentally, I thought the guitar and the piano were nice in it as well. It's a nice guitar there.
Yeah. Again, I mean, the instrumentals on this record are, I don't want to say saving grace, because there are some songs where I don't even think the instrumentals are that great, but there are a couple tracks where the instrumentals really do stand out. This one being one.
Yeah, I was surprised. I agree. That was definitely the high spot with this record. Was the instrumentation is actually quite good, especially for the time. I was pretty surprised.
Well, speaking of instrumentals that don't sound good. In my opinion, let's talk about the next track, We Are the Hungry Men. Those horns in the beginning are just god awful. I do like the chorus. The chorus is pretty cool. Some of the lyrical themes in this song kind of foreshadow some themes that he would later revisit on songs on that are off of the Man Who Sold the World. A couple tracks on Diamond Dogs stand in mind. So this is kind of like a precursor to
definitely reminds me of Diamond Dogs. Some of the stuff on Diamond Dogs, but honestly,
definitely.
It's also kind of interesting. It's probably the first kind of political, I guess, lyrics he would maybe do. I get a sense that he's talking about Nazism, in a sense, in it. It's, or at least alluding to it. It's weird.
I interpreted it, yeah. But at the very least, like you said, this is the first deep political track that we get from him.
And he talks something about infanticide and stuff like that, like some really weird stuff. This one honestly really, like, I appreciate what he was trying to do with it. This one didn't work for me. I also really think, like, adding a lot of the spoken word stuff, like the German stuff, just didn't sound very good. And like you said, instrumentally it was okay, just it was a cool concept. Like I kind of appreciate what he was trying to do. It just didn't work,
I agree. The execution's not quite there. Like I said, I do kind of like the chorus in this song, but that's really about it. So the next track closes side one, and that is When I Live My Dream. I think this is the best song on side one, all in all. Again, this is another song that really instrumentally reminds me of Scott Walker. I actually like this song quite a bit. This song, in terms of vocals, might be his best vocal performance, other than Silly Boy Blue. This song specifically.
I actually highlighted that same thing on here. I thought the vocals and the melody were really good. So with this song specifically, the vocal buildup at the end kind of reminds me of the vocal buildup in Rock and Roll Suicide as well. Builds and builds and builds, and then he just unleashes, and so I kind of I got some Rock and Roll Suicide vibes as far as this track goes. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, what do you think?
I thought this was also a good track too. I don't know if it's between that probably or There Is a Happy Land that I think I like the best on this side of the album. But I pretty much agree with everything that you said. And I wanted to talk about the lyrics. I love the horn in it as well. But the lyrics, probably, like, I take it as the lyrics are him basically dreaming about someone who, like, some woman who hurt him, and then him trying to, like, imagine them, being, living this dream of them being together or whatever. It was cool that he kind of took a love song and made it clever, And there's also some kind of, like, whimsical themes in it too, talking about, I think he talks about, like, slaying dragons.
It's also kind of got like
stuff
this,
like that.
Yeah, it's kind of got like this dreamy sound.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's where that Scott Walker influence comes from.
Yeah, it was a cool track. I liked it.
All right, so, and I think that's where you and I do agree, is that both this track and There Is a Happy Land, I almost said Place Again, are definitely the two best tracks, at least on side one. But let's get into side two, and the next track, one of which is not included on the Spotify version of this record, but it is on Spotify, is Little Bombarder.
I'm going to let you talk about this. I think this and the following one, because I did not, I didn't hear them, so go ahead.
I don't really have much to say about Little Bombarder, other than it's in Walt's time, and I guess that's cool, but that's all I have to say about it. It's another... it's not a great track. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Silly Boy Blue, however, I think is the best song on this record. So you definitely need to go and listen to it, because I think this is the best track off the record. Again, it is on Spotify. It's just not on the Spotify track list of this record. There's a really cool string arrangement. Beautiful. And again, this is another one of those songs. It could probably find a place in the next record, to be honest with you, Space Oddity. So this is one, if there's a track that I'm going to recommend, just to kind of get a overview of Bowie in 1967, it would be The London Boys and Silly Boy Blue. Those would be the two tracks I'd recommend.
Well, I'll have to listen to it then. I'm sorry I didn't do my homework, everybody.
That is okay. So that does bring us to the next track. I've got it as track 9 in our notes. I don't think that's correct, but either way, it's Come and Buy My Toys. I don't like this song. I'm just going to already say I don't like it.
I just said it was pretty average. It's kind of more stripped down than the other songs. It was all right.
Very stripped down, very folky. Yeah. We mentioned that there were a couple tracks that are very folky sounding. This one's one of them. That's all I've got. That's really my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't have much for it either.
Not
pretty average.
Great. Same with the next track, Join the Gang. And this one actually might be the worst song now that I'm thinking about it.
Really? I actually like this one, but I'll tell you why. Really? I liked it instrumentally because there's some awesome
Join the Gang! Yeah. He does that vocal thing again. Gangs!
But the sitar is really cool in it. And there's some organ in it, which sounds really cool. And there's like a ragtime style piano, so I thought instrumentally it was pretty cool. And the ending gets like kind of nuts at the end. But yeah, otherwise, if all those interesting like instrumental bits weren't in there, it would probably be the worst track.
Definitely. And a couple of those bits are pretty cool that you mentioned. That organ one, that doesn't seem to stand out for me, so I'll have to go back and listen to it. But
it's only for like a second. I think it comes up a couple times where there's this cool organ part of it. You have to listen to it again.
Yeah, I'll go back and listen to that one. But other than that, I think it's the worst track, which is really saying something. On an album that has, if you guys haven't figured out my opinion at this point, this is a terrible record. But we'll get to that at the end for our final thoughts. I think you and I are having more similar opinions on it than I thought we would. I just am harsher about them.
Yeah, that's probably it. Because overall, I would say the album wasn't bad, but it's like the word that comes to mind is unremarkable. That's my that's pretty much what I gathered from it.
And I think that's valid, but we'll save that for our final thoughts. I want to finish talking about this record. Where are we? She Got Medals is the next track, and there's this sound effect. I was going to ask you if you picked up on this. In the very beginning, it almost sounds like a mellotron effect. Like it sounds like something you would hear on, In the Court of the Crimson King or In the Wake of Poseidon. But it's like really dark and sinister. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yep, I know what you're talking about. That was cool.
Yeah. So I would be curious. I'm gonna have to do more research if that's what that is, some type of effect on the mellotron. But I mean, in terms of, this is an okay song. Thematically, this is another one of those songs that really predates specifically the cover of The Man Who Sold the World with the drag dress, as well as the Ziggy Stardust character. So, of course, this song covers, some of those, those homosexual themes.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's alluding to the character in the song is like transsexual or something. I have no idea.
Yeah, which for 1967, the only other group that was doing that and talking about those things were the Velvet Underground.
Yeah. Or maybe the Fugs. You ever hear the Fugs?
Oh, yeah, they're the Fugs, yeah. There you go, the Fugs and the Velvet Underground.
I don't even think the Mothers talked about. Maybe, I don't know. I'd have to.
I don't think so, but you would know that better than me.
Yeah, I have to think about some of those. Anyway, I actually thought this was one of the most interesting tracks. Lyrically, it's probably my favorite. And again, it has that twist ending at the end that I really liked. So it was kind of cool. It's like you think she dies in the war, but she ends up, she ends up going back to being a she or something. It's kind of a cool song. I actually like the lyrics. But the core, it
is a neat track, and again, lyrically, I would have to agree. It probably lyrically is the best song.
Yeah. But the melody, like the "She's Got Medals," is kind of like,
got medals.
Yeah, it's like, it's alright, you know. Like, the melody's not that
Yeah.
great, but the lyrics are good, so.
All right, so that brings us to the second to last track, Maid of Bond Street. This is another one, and I'm looking at our mutual notes, and I didn't include the last two tracks. I hate myself. Maid of Bond Street. Another one of those songs I don't have an opinion on, other than it's just not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
I just put that it really reminded me of Syd Barrett. And the only thing I liked on it was the accordion and the strings. There's definitely an accordion in there, which I approve of.
You know, if you haven't picked it up from either of us by now, this record's not a very memorable record. And even after listening to it, I want to say I probably listened to it 7 times total before we recorded.
Yeah.
Twice just today. I listened to it twice, but I think 7 times overall.
Yep.
And you know, after 7 listens, there are still tracks, this one being one of them, where I couldn't tell you anything about it. Even in my notes, it says no opinion other than it's bad.
I wonder, I'm going to call it, this is your cat food, this song.
Look, I'll take cat food over it. Cat food grew on me.
I know.
Spoiler alert if you haven't listened to the last KC episode, but I'll... Cat food is like, you know, fucking Beethoven's ninth compared to this song. All right.
Final track. What do you think?
And transition. Final track. Please, Mr. Gravedigger. Please, Mr. Gravedigger. I can't talk.
You got this. It's all good.
No, I got it. Yeah, so this is the closing track. This one is, without a doubt, the most experimental song.
Best track on the album.
Oh, see, that's where I disagree. By far, do not think it's the best track on the record, but I do appreciate the level of experimentation. This definitely foreshadows some later 70s Bowie, for sure, in terms of experimenting. But, you know, again, this is another one that reminds me of, you know, Scott Walker's music, but all in all, that's really about it.
All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. The spoken word bit, which really is the whole song, I think, is okay, but beyond the experimentation, this is just another song.
Pretty much an acapella with a bunch of different sound effects and stuff. I thought it was hilarious, and for some reason, I don't know why, each time I heard it, I kept thinking of the part in Majora's Mask when you have to, like, follow the Gravedigger around and have him dig. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I know exactly what you're
So, like, I kept thinking of that, and I was like, okay, this makes this cool. It just made me think of the Gravedigger from Majora's Mask.
I love that, and I totally see it.
So, yeah, best track on the album.
All right, best track. Interesting.
So, yeah.
So, that's David Bowie's debut record, guys. There was one other B-side I wanted to note that was released after, because the A-side was Love You Till Tuesday. So the B-side to that was Did You Ever Have a Dream? This one is also available on the Images 1966-1967 compilation record I mentioned before. This is another one that's just okay. Not very memorable like the majority of these songs. But, you know, I would definitely take it over tracks like Join the Gang and probably over We Are Hungry Man, a couple tracks. But, yeah, just, you know, B-side, nothing that special. But, yeah, so that's the first David Bowie record, guys. Let's get into our top 3 tracks.
Okie dokie. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
I think I'm going to say that mine are When I Live My Dream. This is in no order, by the way. Let's see. Honestly, probably, yeah. When I Live My Dream, She's Got Medals, or There's a Happy Land. I don't know which one to pick. I'm going to go When I Live My Dream, She's Got Medals, and Please, Mr. Gravedigger.
Please, Mr. Gravedigger was your third one?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go with comeback notes. And this will be in order. Silly Boy Blue.
Okay.
Then When I Live My Dream as my second pick, and then my third pick, There Is a Happy Land. However, if the London Boys was on this record, then that would be my number one. Silly Boy Blue would be my number two.
I got a question for
When
you.
I Live My Dream.
Is there a good album here? Can we give this the perfect beat treatment, or do you think there's no hope for it? Like if we were,
I think there's no hope for
if we were to like incorporate other singles and B-sides and such.
I think in an alternate universe, what you do is
there an EP?
Space Oddity ended up being the debut David Bowie record. However, there were singles that were released prior. And I think you could have Silly Boy Blue along with There's a Happy Land released as a single. Silly Boy Blue being the A side. There's a Happy Land as the B side. And then I think you could do the London Boys and When I Live My Dream also as a single together. Beyond that...
Whoa. What about Please Mr. Gravedigger? Come on now.
Nope. That could be released as like a unreleased studio cut on the 50th anniversary of Space Oddity.
It's you know what? It's kind of his King Crimson Barbershop or whatever.
Fine, but nope.
Alrighty.
But other than that, there is no salvaging this record.
Okay, that's fair.
In my humble opinion, not that was very humble of me.
Well, that being said, do you have any final thoughts on it? Like mine is literally just unremarkable. Couple of decent songs, but it just didn't blow me away at all. You know, there wasn't anything really that stood out to me very much.
So
I didn't think it was bad though. I didn't think it was. Like, I didn't listen to it and recoil in horror or anything, as I assume you have a little bit, but...
Oh, I have, and then some. I think as far as my final thoughts, the songwriting is horrible. It gets better, guys. I mean, this Bowie I would put amongst one of the greatest songwriters of all time.
I would too.
So ignore this record as far as songwriting goes. I think the songwriting's trash. It's like a bunch of short stories with just terrible punchlines. Like that's how I could really describe every song. Most of the instrumentals are just hilariously dull. We don't know if we want to be the Kinks on one song. We don't know if we want to be Syd Barrett. We don't know if we want to be Scott Walker. Yeah, that's really how I feel about it. It is all the way down at the bottom without spoiling my top 20, not my top 20, my top album picks, rankings, whatever you want to call that. I'll just tell you already this one's going to be at the bottom. I'm just going to tell you that already.
Well, that's fair.
And there are a couple other oh boy records that we'll get to. But no, this one without a doubt is all the way at the bottom.
Well, hopefully the next record will be a bit better of an experience for you.
Yeah, no, it definitely will. And look, I mean, while the next two records are a big jump to this one, for me, David Bowie starts at Hunky Dory. There are some select tracks off the next two that we'll talk about when we talk about those records that I love, but like Hunky Dory is like really where things get great.
Well, it's going to be fun disagreeing with you, Andrew. So I look forward to it.
As do I, because we, my friend, season 1, we shared too many opinions, and it's time to have a brawl.
Yeah,
it's time to fight.
Let's brawl. Finish him. All right. But what do you think?
So
should we wrap it up?
I think that's about a wrap, guys. I just want to end by saying that thank you for those of you that have continued to follow us and listen to us. Episode 2, of course, will cover Space Oddity. I'm very much looking forward to that, as I know you are.
Oh, definitely.
Like we said, this one, because it's the first episode, was a little longer. Most of these were aiming for 35-45 minutes, with a few exceptions that we'll we'll tell you as we go. But
we're a little over an hour right now, so we're
a little over an hour, so perfect.
Yeah.
This is a great place to end. Sundays every 2 weeks, so 2 weeks from this Sunday, I don't have the date in front of me, it's when we'll record episode 2.
Yep.
We will have this episode dropped Friday. Check this episode out. If you haven't gone back and listened to the King Crimson series, please do so. Mr. Current, any final adieus?
Thanks again, everyone, for watching. And keep out for another video on our YouTube channel that I'm going to be doing soon that's completely unrelated, but it's going to be, I'll say it's a music list. That's your taste.
Yes, please do. I'm very, very much looking forward to that video.
And that's going to be more of a video format, so I intend to do some editing, but I got some other stuff on my other channel I got to work on. Plus, I got to put this out. So we'll see when that comes out, but look for it in the next few weeks.
And hopefully we will have Anchor working by episode 2.
We'll try our best.
But all right, guys. Until next time.
See you next time on Sound of Music. Bye, guys.
The Sound of Music. Bye bye.
Peace.